Hi everybody, and welcome to Big Joe's Journal. My name is Joe Tilden. I am the host of this program. Well, we're very fortunate that we have a very beautiful day here in Rutland, Vermont. It's a late summer day, and it's a little bit cool, but it's very, very comfortable. And the forecast says that we're going to have a few more days like this. Hopefully, it's not Indian summer. Hopefully, Indian summer will come a little later. You know, maybe during foliage, which is right around the corner. Well, as you know, with the completion of the Big World's Fair at Tunbridge, your local fairs in Vermont have come to an end. And the big show in the area now is the Big E down at West Springfield, Massachusetts, the Eastern States Exposition. And for some hardy fairgoers, there's one more fair in October up in Maine, the Freiburg Fair up in the state of Maine. And that seems to draw fair attendance and all that sort of thing. Well, we have lucked out once again on the weather. The latest hurricane that is floating in from the Atlantic is supposed to make a sharp right turn and not hit the coast of the United States. As you know, for the coastal U.S., North Carolina took the brunt of our last hurricane. And this one, for whatever reason, you know, the ways of Mother Nature are still a mystery to mankind, is making a sharp right turn. The bad news is that it's probably going to smack Bermuda and do a heck of a lot of damage there. And that is very unfortunate. You know, it's going to be tough to rescue those people being out in the ocean the way Bermuda is. And it's going to be very, very tough to, if they want to vacate, I don't know if there's still time to do it or not. But for those that are there and have trouble riding out the storm, a lot of them are going to try it and fail. And the rescue efforts are going to be a little more complicated because of its physical location. But we hope for the best for the folks in Bermuda. And while this storm does not have the force of its predecessor, still any hurricane where you got winds up around 80, 90 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour can be damaging and can create, you know, a lot of havoc. So that's so much for Mother Nature. Well, as summer comes to an end, baseball season's winding down. And for the Sad Sox, well, probably the ending can't come soon enough. Boston seems to have improved a little bit. They just took 2 from the Philadelphia Phillies. The Phillies took 2 from the Red Sox at Fenway Park. The Red Sox go on the road and do a lot better than they did at home. And from there, I believe it's down to Texas for 3, then into Tampa Bay for 4, and back to Boston. And they will have 3 with San Francisco. And then they're going to close out at home. 3 games with Baltimore, and this season will be over. John Henry, who is the owner of the Red Sox, I think he's been very, very frustrated. He's put an awful lot of money into this team, and he's paying some big salaries. In fact, the Red Sox payroll is the 3rd highest in Major League Baseball, behind the Dodgers and the Yankees. And I think he really got frustrated. He was the prime mover behind moving Major League Baseball over to London for a couple games. As you know, he also owns a soccer team in England, the Liverpool team, and he has brought them over to the United States in the summer to perform at Fenway Park. So here he's got a world champion in baseball, so he's going to take him to Europe, show him off to all of his British friends over there. And the team they're going to play are the New York Yankees. Well, as you know, things didn't work out the way John Henry thought they would. And the Yankees annihilated the Red Sox in 2 games. In fact, the Yankees sort of treated Red Sox pitching like batting practice. And I'm sure John Henry had to be very, very upset over that. Well, they come back over here, stateside, and what happens? 4-game series, Fenway Park. Red Sox win the first game, win it handily. Then they blow game 2, they lose game 3, and I think John Henry had it. And that's why he fired his general manager. He didn't even wait till the end of the season. But he fired his general manager, and he made it quite plain that he doesn't want pitcher Rick Porcello to be on the team next year. And I think you're going to see some other changes with the Sad Sox. Price is at the point in his contract where he can opt out if he so chooses. Martinez is at the point in his contract where if he chooses, he can also opt out. And there are some folks coming up who are eligible for free agency. Mookie Betts. Mookie will get big bucks wherever he goes. Whether he stays with Boston or he goes somewhere else. Hopefully, he won't go to the Yankees. But, you know, I don't think the Yankees are a threat in that direction. The Yankees have got such a powerful farm system that when their regulars went on the DL, the Yankees were able to plug in somebody who just kept the ball rolling. And it was mainly these guys that the Yankees brought up from their farm system that have propelled them to the American League East title. So what happens when you get into the postseason, some of these regulars come back? Do you dump the guys that got you there? Or do you stay with them and tell the regulars to take the postseason off and see what happens next year? But I don't think the Yankees are a threat to get Mookie. I think they've got enough talent of their own. They've got Mr. Judge out there in right field. He's going to be around for years to come. So I think probably, where would Mookie go if he doesn't stay with the Red Sox? Well, that's anybody's guess. I think he'd want to go to a contender. Maybe the Cubs over in the National League. Maybe the Washington Nationals in the National League. Possibly the Atlanta Braves. If he stays in the American League, well, that's a good question. Maybe Cleveland. Oh, I'm not quite sure if he'd be happy in Cleveland. Probably not Texas, although Texas is going to have a beautiful new stadium next year. But that is a possibility. Maybe the California Angels. Mookie would sort of fit right in there. On the other hand, if the Red Sox unload David Price in his big contract, and Martinez opts out, there'll be that extra money on the payroll, and they might be able to sweeten the pot a little bit and keep Mookie in Boston. Certainly every Red Sox fan hopes that Mookie stays patrolling right field at Fenway Park and leading off the Red Sox batting order. Is Martinez going to stay? I do not know. He has that option out. And also there are a couple of other people that are eligible for free agency this year. The Red Sox need to do desperately. Their pitching staff is really shot. Their bullpen, for the most part, are a bunch of minor league arms. Although the bullpen has come through and they've done a good job, but you know, it's looking like a circus. When you got 22 relief pitchers, there's so many relief pitchers that the bullpen area, they have to bring in extra chairs. They can't all fit within the dugout down there. The Red Sox farm system under Dombrowski, he didn't pay enough attention to it. And the Red Sox farm system that produced some bona fide major leaguers seems to have hit a dry spell. None of the teams in the Red Sox farm system this year made their league postseason playoffs. That's not a good sign. And that might have been one of the reasons why John Henry ditched his director of baseball operations. You got to rebuild the farm system so that that farm system is going to produce the talent that you need to be a contender. And of course, as you know, this year the Red Sox, after winning 119 games a year ago, are going to be darn lucky to win 90 this year. And they will finish third in the American League East. So, as we always used to say for years, previous to this century, the Red Sox fan, wait till next year. Wait till next year. So that's what you got to do this year and see what happens next year. For New England sports fans, however, not all is not lost. The New England Patriots look like a powerhouse. The way they demolished Pittsburgh 33-3, and then demolished Miami this week 43-0. The only problem seems to be that their kicker missed 2 points after. So he's got a new holder this year, and it may be that they're not yet on the same page. Although by the time you get to the big leagues, you should be. You know, there's no excuse for not being on the same page. Well, getting back to the political scene, some of our financial bigwigs are getting a little bit concerned about a possible recession. If you look back in history, every time you start clamping tariffs, the result is that the United States has a recession or a depression. We go way back to the post-Civil War era. Back when Ulysses Grant was president, the 18th president of the United States, and Congress imposed tariffs, the United States went into a depression, economically went into a depression. And when those tariffs were lifted, the economy recovered. There was another recession in the 1800s when tariffs went into effect under the first Vermonter to be president, Chester Alan Arthur. And again, you had a recession. Grover Cleveland, when he came in as the 22nd president, he lifted them. The economy recovered. And you had the same thing in the 1890s under William McKinley. And we saw the Great Depression of the 1920s, when there were a number of tariffs put in supposedly to protect American industry, but they did just the opposite. And who was president then? That was Calvin Coolidge. And those tariffs continued under his successor, Herbert Hoover. The result was that we had the Great Depression of 1929. October 29th, 1929, when the stock market totally collapsed. And you had many of these high financiers committing suicide, mainly by dropping out of high-story windows in New York and other big cities. Well, we know the story of that depression. Took a change of administrations. Franklin Roosevelt coming in with some new and novel ideas. Many of them said they were socialists. But he got the country back on track. He put the country back to work, mainly by working on our infrastructure, our highways, our sewage system, our water systems, on conservation, and working on our national parks and other areas. And the country was on the road to recovery. Along comes World War II, and of course, went into full recovery with World War II, although you don't want a war to end the Depression. Well, let's forward to today. And the klutz in the White House is imposing tariff after tariff after tariff. The rest of the world is fighting back, particularly China, imposing tariffs on American goods that are sold in China. The result is that our farmers are suffering. They can't sell soybeans to China. They can't sell hogs to China. And their markets, their foreign markets, have more or less collapsed. And consequently, the folks on Wall Street and our other financial wizards are saying that there's a strong possibility of a recession. And of course, since most of them are Republican, they're probably not telling us the full truth. They're probably shading it so things don't look as bad as they really are. Well, under George W. Bush, as you know, we had a recession. And it took Barack Obama and his administration to come in and to do some things that people didn't think were right, but it turned the country around. And it also caught up with some of these crooks that were swindling the public. Wells Fargo, for example, and a number of other of your financial conglomerates there on Wall Street. Of course, you see the ads now for Wells Fargo. Well, all the people that they swindled over the years and that they cheated, now they're saying, we have been reborn. We are repentant. We are brand new. Trust us again. I don't know. I think you swindle the public once. Chances are pretty good you're going to do it again. And despite Wells Fargo's claims that they are repentant and are reformed, personally, you can't really trust them. And some of these other big conglomerates. Right now, there's a rumor of a possible strike at General Motors. General Motors was one of the companies that the Obama administration bailed out so they wouldn't close and all those jobs would be lost. General Motors is in double trouble. Not only are they looking at a strike, but many of their vehicles are being recalled because I believe there's fault with the braking system, especially on their big sellers, their pickup trucks. So there's a large recall on General Motors vehicles. They'll make these repairs without charging the customer. And facing a strike, that's a double whammy. Well, the political season, still low-key here in Vermont. We have another session of the legislature to go. But on the national scene, it's alive and well. The Democrats had their third, they call it a debate, but I would call it more like a forum in Houston, Texas. And I don't know how many of you watched it, but I think the former Vice President, Joe Biden, did very, very well. He took some tough shots, particularly from Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Bernie was on his right, Elizabeth was on his left. He also took some shots from fellow Democrat, former urban secretary Castro. Also took some pot shots at him. And Kamala Harris, well, not so much this time. But I thought Joe Biden handled himself very well, probably his best performance yet. The first one, he looked kind of lost. Second one, a little bit better. For this one, with 10 contenders for the nomination, I think Joe Biden handled himself very well. Who hurt himself? I think Bernie Sanders. Bernie has got to stop looking like the angry old, crazy old uncle. I guess that's the best way to put it. But he was there on TV ranting and raving about the 1% and so forth and so on, and free medical care for everybody, and shaking his fingers and lecturing. Looked like he spent too much time in the sun. And he sort of came across as, the old uncle that you kind of have living off in an apartment. You really don't want to acknowledge he's part of the family, but unfortunately, every occasion he shows up, and you kind of say, well, every family has one. Sometimes I think I'm the one in my family, but I don't know. But Bernie came across as the angry old man. And as I say, I think Biden handled himself very, very well. And if I were a betting man right now, I would look at a winning ticket of Joe Biden for president and Senator Kamala Harris for vice president. At one time I thought it might be Beto O'Rourke, but Beto came off very well. Former Congressman Beto O'Rourke. He came off very well in this debate. But with 10 going, and I think there's going to be 10 in the next one, which is going to be held in Ohio, which is a state that normally votes Republican, has produced a number of Republican presidents. They're interesting. They're interesting. And see how people stand. Excuse me. I also noticed at the end of this forum that Biden and Harris had a big hug for each other. So obviously there's no bitterness there, and I think they would make a very strong and a very powerful ticket. On the Republican side, the Trump people are trying to wrap up that nomination for Donald Trump. For example, South Carolina has decided to forego a Republican primary this year. In other words, they're going to deny certain voters in South Carolina the right to either vote for the Republican nominee, who will be Mr. Trump, or somebody else. And there are two people running against Trump. Neither of them got chance of a snowball in hell of winning that nomination, but at least they're in there. One is the former governor of Massachusetts, Governor Wild, and the former governor of South Carolina. And I can't remember what his name is, but it's not the lady that was governor. I don't know what she is doing now. She was our former representative to the United Nations, and then she stepped down after 2 years, and I think she's back in private life now. But Trump only has token opposition, which is too bad. So the political scene moves on. As I say, Ohio will be the next Democratic forum. And Joe Biden does as well in that as he did in the first one. He is still the leader. Elizabeth Warren went ahead of him a little bit, but I believe the latest polls, especially after the last forum, is going to show that Joe Biden is back in front. Probably Elizabeth Warren might still be running second. I don't know who replaced her. Harris was running fourth. She may move up to third, and Bernie dropped down to fourth. Bernie dropped down to fifth at one time. But after his performance this past week, I think he hurt himself. And you know, if he keeps performing like that in public, he's not helping his cause any. But I think in the long run, since Bernie and Elizabeth Warren are both going after the same group of Democratic voters, I think in the process they're going to eliminate each other. Well, big news overseas is that some of the top oil refineries in Saudi Arabia were rocketed. And the word is that the price of fuel oil is going to go up. Well, anything for an excuse to raise prices. Right now, the top fuel oil producer in the world is the United States of America. Most of the fuel out of Saudi Arabia is going to Europe. And of course, right away, Mike Pompeo, our Secretary of State, blames Iran. Iran says they didn't do it. There's a terrorist group supported by the Taliban, and they say they're the ones that did it, that destroyed the oil refineries in Saudi Arabia. The Saudis say they will still be pumping oil and still selling it. After all, it's oil that gives Saudi Arabia any kind of position in world power. One good thing that dum-dum in the White House did is when he got rid of Crazy John Bolton. Crazy John, Trump's security advisor, in fact, I believe the third one he's had, is a war hawk. Crazy John's never fought in a war himself, but he just doesn't see everybody else get involved in a war as long as it doesn't hurt him. As long as it's somebody else's kids that are being killed, not his. He'd just soon take us to war. And I think he was one of the prime movers in the Trump administration, urging us to go to war with Iran, which would make no sense whatsoever. Right now, we've got problems in Afghanistan, getting out of there. The Afghans don't want us to leave. Well, supposedly we've built up their army and we say, hey, this is your country, you've got to defend it. And yet, we're still losing American personnel over there. A word that is rather upsetting is that the Vermont National Guard is going to be federalized. They're saying next year. And where are we going to send these guys? To Afghanistan? For more casualties? Now, I think it's time, and I think the next president has to say, we're going to leave Afghanistan, not set a date, but I think we should be prepared to, we know where the Taliban is located, and I think we should be prepared to hit them, and hit them hard with missiles and rockets and bombs, maybe for a couple of days, and leave them crippled. Pull our guys out of there and say, all right, Afghanistan, this is your country. We've carried you as far as we can. Now defend yourselves. Well, people are saying if we leave, it'll become a hotbed of terrorism again. Our job is to defend our country. And it doesn't make much sense to send our best people over to Afghanistan and have them come back in a pine box. The last American to die over there, it was his sixth deployment. His sixth deployment. Only less than 2% of the citizens of this country are in our military. And we're asking our military to do a very, very tremendous job, and they are doing a great job, fabulous job. But we can't ask them to continually sacrifice our best. And what happens when we federalize the Vermont Guard? Are they going to Afghanistan? Nobody knows. But if they do, sure as hell there's going to be casualties. And it's really going to bring that war home. Well, with that, May Almighty God in His infinite wisdom continue to bless these United States of America. God love you. Have a great week. And we'll see you all next week.